I saw you do a video on this, and I really appreciated what you shared. So I thought it'd be a good question for this as well. Why do you believe so many pastors mess up, fall into sexual sin, cheat on their spouses, etc.?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between why pastors do it and why non-pastors do it.
Right.
I think when like nowadays, if you're not a pastor, if you're not in ministry, cheating, it's just almost like become the norm. People believe that their only goal in life is to satisfy their own desires, right? Like, I need to be happy. My definition of marriage is two servants trying to outserve each other. And, it's like, if that's your equation, like two servants in love trying to outserve each other, you can make it through anything. But in the world's definition, they get married to meet their own needs,
Right.
not to meet the other person's needs. But when you're a pastor, and we see this all the time, and I am a pastor, I will tell you, there's no amount of money that will ever be enough. You don't do it for the income, you do it for the outcome. So like, I don't pastor for the income, I pastor for the outcome. There's no amount of money. And the other thing is, it's such an uncomfortable job. You're on every single day. Even if you try to institute Sabbath, you can't stop somebody from dying on your Sabbath. You can't stop somebody from, just having a crisis. Like, it's so hard. So I really think that the reason why we keep seeing it, because it's whether it's someone super intellectual and academic like Ravi Zacharias, and we see the accusations and allegations after his death, whether it's the Pentecostal charismatic guys, spirit-filled guys, the reform guys, like, it doesn't matter what camp you come from, what spectrum, it affects all, like every person. And I think a lot of it is just counterfeit comfort. And it's like, as soon as you go in search of that comfort somewhere other than the Holy Spirit. And one of the messages that I try to speak, especially to men, is that learn how to suffer well. Because a lot of times we hear about like, well, man, when you come to Christ, like, he'll take away cast all your anxieties, give me all your anxieties. And that's true. But I do think that there's that other side of it where it's like, I got to learn how to suffer well. Like Jesus went right before the cross, there was nowhere to put his anxiety. Like, he was sweating until it turned to blood. Like, there was no getting out of it. And when he tried to cast his anxieties on God and said, let this cup pass from me, then he knew, like, no, nevertheless, I have to take this cross. And I think there's times when you go to God and you're like, God, help me stop feeling this way. And God's like, I can't. You have to bear this cross. Like, you have to take this. And so my message is like, suffer well. Get really good at suffering. There's going to be times in marriage where the marriage doesn't meet your needs. Suffer well. And because then you become more like Jesus. Like, I'll be honest with you, my wife had a season of being chronically ill, which she was actually healed, which is a whole story we don't have time for.
Right.
But I remember like going through that season and saying like, well, actually my wife is a really powerful preacher, very powerful worship leader. We went overseas and did some crazy ministry. She was pioneering as like a female. Like, I really support female preachers, my wife being one of them. And she was pioneering. God was using her actually in Ukraine. This was years ago.
Wow.
Getting a virus that like totally crippled her. And it was devastating to our family. So there was a season where like my wife wasn't mentally and emotionally and physically there for me because she couldn't be. And by the world standards, like, okay, now like what do you go find you get fulfilled other ways. But I remember in that season saying like, I made a vow to her that says in sickness and in health. And I'm going to honor that vow because covenant is how God operates. And I'm going to become more like him. I'm going to learn how to suffer well. And I think if I could say anything to those pastors, like getting better at suffering, not trying to escape it. The brutal message.